The Wellness Show, episode 221. Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. Hi, this is Tyhson Banighen with The Wellness Show. I'm your coach and mentor, and I'm excited to talk about 4 ways to relieve stress. Boy, I don't know about you, but stress seems to just creep up on you and bite you in the ankles, and today was no exception. So to help us do all this and learn how to manage stress, we brought Devorah on board, and she's a transformational coach and healer and an expert on dealing with stress. So welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Tyhson. Thanks for having me.
So what is this whole thing about stress anyway? Why is it so overwhelming for us as humans?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. Why is stress overwhelming? I think part of the problem is that we're just not given the tools to deal with stress. Like, it's not something that we learn at school. It's not something that your parents sit you down and say, okay, listen, Johnny, this is how you deal with stress. It's just this natural thing that happens. And when we don't have good models in our environment to show us how to deal with stress, or we don't have any formal instruction, we have to kind of rely on our default, which is our emotional reactions. And, our physical bodies are programmed to relate to stressful situations. So yeah, stress can be overwhelming. That's right.
Wow, what a great answer. So hopefully on this show, we'll give you the basis for emotional intelligence so that you can catch yourself and know what are the 4 basic things you can do to catch yourself when you're in the midst of it, or you're overwhelmed by it, or even hopefully before it even begins.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this? What does it mean to be a transformational coach and healer?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question, because when I try to find a way to describe what I do, I help people have transformations. That means changing the way that they live their life, changing the way they see themselves, being able to manifest what they want in their lives. And I really resonate well with high achievers, overachievers who feel a lot of push and drive to achieve their goals, and don't find time for themselves, and maybe have low energy, and they're kind of at the bottom of their fuel tank, and to transform their lives, to help them to become more calm and relaxed and more present for themselves and their families, and more grounded. And as a coach, I love to help people be accountable for their actions, to take responsibility for their lives, because that's the only way that we can make changes. And at the same time, sometimes people can take a back seat and then let me be a healer and be a vessel to facilitate divine healing energy, so that they can just soak that up and receive. So it's kind of like I help people with the balance of achieving their goals and receiving a divine influx of energy to help them do that.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think, with, high-level entrepreneurs or high-level achievers, they've got their foot on the gas. Mm-hmm. And that, desire to succeed is, for some people, is overwhelming. And as you would say, it's very close to stress. I mean, the energy to generate or to create is very similar to stress. So one's on the positive side and one's on the negative side. So helping people to learn that balance, or, when you're going into when I say negative, I mean you're losing energy, and when positive, you're gaining energy. It's the same excitement. So I can see why for, high stressed or very successful entrepreneurs, learning these skills would be very important. I know for myself, having a cough and a cold, for example, is a case of being overstressed, right? Of not being able to process all of the information I receive. in the last 21 days, which was, a humongous amount. My body just couldn't process it all. So it said, okay, time to shut her down. Time to just reintegrate.
Yeah, and a cold and a cough, getting sick is actually an opportunity, like you say, to look at yourself and say, okay, slow down. And that's actually part of my personal story, how I got involved in this in the first place. Kind of to backtrack, I was a high achiever, overachiever as a kid, so much so that by 5th grade, I knew I wanted to go to Harvard. And I would cry every time that I would get a bad grade. Right? So I always had that sense of stress and anxiety. And fast forward into my mid-20s, after I'd been through college, I did go to Harvard, been through college and actually changed my life. I became religious. That's why I'm wearing a head covering. And I moved to Israel, right? That was all part of my journey of trying to achieve the highest level of spirituality, the highest level of person that I could be. I'm Jewish. I'll move to Israel, right? And then getting married and becoming a mother. And I still hadn't really solved that problem of how do I get rid of stress? And I actually got ill and I became hospitalized and I was going blind in my left eye because of all the stress. It was hitting my nervous system. And I started developing an autoimmune disease. And that was my signal to stop and reevaluate how I was living my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do is I help people to avoid burning out because I don't want them to go through what I did.
Yeah, what a story. I mean, that's quite amazing. So, So you've learned how to balance this desire for education, for brilliance in academically and with your spirituality, and I think for most people that's very, very difficult. Once the rational brain has to do with analytical processing, and achieving at Harvard, it's got a certain set of skills which is completely different than being spiritual, which is more intuitive and highly psychic and connected to source. So learning how to balance those two realities simultaneously must have been not an easy what would I say goal for you to achieve.
Well, coming to terms with being a highly sensitive and spiritual person with intuitive abilities and coming from that kind of academic environment, that was kind of hard to, how do I integrate both of these? How do I play the role of academically minded person and also a spiritual person? And I think for anyone who is a high achiever, to connect to their spiritual side is so important. And it's not to say that you have to be a highly sensitive person. I'm presuming that people who are interested in the material we're presenting are highly spiritual. It's all about tapping into that inner voice, that divine voice, what your soul is saying, what's your inner guidance saying. And I think it's all about learning how to listen to that inner voice and honor that inner voice. And that really is one of the biggest keys to reducing your stress, is to make that spiritual connection, right? Because if we're running all the time and we're in the physical body and we're feeling all, emotional, frustrated that we can't get what you want done, you didn't finish everything at the end of the day, or maybe feeling resentful that other people are taking up your time when you're so focused on your goals, or guilty about wanting to take time for yourself, right? So we're bombarded with all of these stresses, but you've got this little tiny voice inside, right? The soul and the desire of the soul, which is to be totally connected, right? Totally connected to its source and to you as being the representative of the divine, right? So it's so important to tune into that voice, that really super big key to reducing your stress.
So were you, did you know that you were connected to source or empathic or intuitive when you were young? Did you know that? Was that just something you were totally aware of?
Yeah, well, did you ever have this experience when you were little when you were thinking of someone and then the phone rang and it was that person?
Yeah, absolutely.
That happens for you now, right? Sometimes that's like the first sign for people that they are intuitive and really sensitive. So stuff like that used to happen to me. And there was one time I was on the phone with like a high school buddy that they were saying that they were thinking of, committing suicide, God forbid. And I think I was in 10th grade, something like that. And I found myself actually coaching that person out of it. Now that I think this is the first time I'm thinking about it in years, but helping them see how important they are, how, inherent their existence is in the world, how the world needs them. So yeah, at a pretty young age, I had a sense that there was something spiritual about me, and also my connection to my Jewish roots as well. Introduced me to the idea that there is something beyond.
So the next question is, being at Harvard, we talked a bit about that. Were you able to maintain your connection to source when you were at Harvard? Were you able to balance those two worlds, or was it something that sort of led to overwhelm and then you had to rediscover your connection to source?
I remember there was a sign up at Harvard. They would post these different things, and one of them was, "Is there God at Harvard?" I remember that. To be honest with you, looking back, I was not connected to my spiritual sense at all. And after college, I actually went into a depression because of that. And one of the things that helps me keep connected is music, either writing songs, which I used to do a lot more, or listening to music, or just, appreciating that I have a teenage daughter who loves to sing. So it's really important to keep connected with something that lights you up. And what happens often is as we get older, we lose that connection and we don't have time for ourselves, right? And you're running around and maybe you're pulled between work and family and you're juggling all of your responsibilities and you're just not finding time for yourself. But there's this little kid inside of you that's just dying to, take a walk out in nature or dance again. Maybe you took dancing lessons, or to go out and play sports. And it's so important to connect to those things that that light you up, that keep you connected to that youthful side of yourself, to your energy. I worked with someone once that hadn't gone horseback riding in a really long time. And that was a thing she used to love to do. But she had gotten so sick by taking care of other people, taking care of her clients. She was a wellness practitioner, taking care of her kids and overgiving. And she was so stressed out. And then eventually, by applying the tools that I gave her, she was back on that horse and she was able to get her energy back. And that filled her with so much youthfulness. So if you can connect to those things that you used to do when you were younger, they're going to bring you energy, and they're going to not only reduce your stress, but give you more energy and help you feel totally connected to yourself. Because that's the key. We want to connect to that inner soul.
So we were talking about, the topic is the 4 ways, right, to deal with stress. So is that one of them?
So actually, let's jump right in. So when it comes to transformation, to be honest with you, these are 4 steps that that's a process that I use that can be applied to anything. And today we're going to deliberately apply them to reducing stress. So the first step is awareness. Okay, it seems pretty simple. Just being aware of yourself on all levels, being aware physically. Let's start with that because, that's what's evident. Where are you feeling the stress in your body? For a lot of people, it's in their shoulders or in their head. Maybe they get headaches, or in their lower back. Sometimes there's stress around the chest area and there's kind of shallow breathing or stopping breathing, right? So getting in touch with just your body, what's going on, right? Or being aware of what emotion you're feeling. Is it frustration? Is it anger? Are you angry that you can't get your goals accomplished? Are you anxious about what's on your plate right? So being aware of your emotions. Really important is on the mental level. What are you thinking about? And sometimes, Tyhson, it's not so evident. Sometimes you need to just step back and stop and read your own mind. Are you thinking like, oh my gosh, you know, they're gonna kill me if I don't get this done? Or, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I have to push myself and, you know, take something else on. Or I should do this, you know, all kinds of pressurized thoughts that are like the tapes playing in our heads, right? So being aware on the mental level. And then finally being aware of your spiritual connection. You know, are you connected? Are you connected to yourself? Are you connecting to the divine? You know, if that works for you, whatever you call that, whether you call that source or the one, you know, or whatever. So, right, so that's step one, that's awareness. That makes sense?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So step number two is acceptance, right? But not acceptance like resignation, like, oh gosh, like it's more acceptance of being present. It's a presence and an allowing. You know, the saying, what you resist persists, right? So there's a reason why. If you are resisting your feelings, they're going to keep showing up. My personal belief is that the divine really wants us to be in ourselves, be present. There's a part of ourselves that is divine. The divine wants us to be all there inside ourselves. So the step here is feeling the feelings. If you can name it, that's even better. You know, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling anxiety. If you can name, what are you thinking? You know, what are the tapes that are running through my head? I'm always thinking like, oh gosh, I'm just not good enough. It's really important to know this. And most obviously, what are you feeling in your body? You know, be with that discomfort in your shoulders. Be with the shortness of breath, you know, rather than trying to say like, oh gosh, you know, I'm so bad. Again, my back hurts, you know. It's really allowing, just being real with what's happening, right? So paying attention to that. And what's interesting is that you start to breathe. You start to notice your breath. And that's a really important key in this step, right? Because that comes from the divine. So that's allowance.
Oh, that's a lot in one area.
That's yeah, that's yeah, and at the end of this, I'll explain how you can actually experience this a little bit more. The third step is creation. What do you want to be your experience instead? You know, particularly in your mind, because what happens in your mind really is reflected in your emotions. You know, if you've got a thought that you're not enough, right? You're going to feel something with that too. That's going to be like a desperation or maybe a guilt or something like that. Being aware of what's in your minds, you know, and what do you want? Sorry, that was awareness. What do you want to create instead? You know, like let's for you, for instance, like let's say you could create any mindset you wanted. You know, would it be, you know, I'm a stressed out person. No, Tyhson, what would you create instead? Okay. Yeah. Ease, grace, and gratitude, right? So you want to be thinking that you're in a place of ease, in a place of grace, in a place of gratitude, right? And you can just feel how that would change your experience, right? Thinking that you're in a place of appreciation and of well-being, as opposed to under the gun, on a deadline, having to you know, cater to all these different people's needs, whether it's your clients, whether it's your kids, whether it's your employers, right? You can be in a state of, you know, chaos going around you, but as long as your mindset is in the right place, right? Something that you have chosen that you wanted, then that can be your experience. That's what you create, right? So this step is called creation. And then the final step, yep, yeah, it certainly is. It is an important step. And then the fourth step is action. So you always want to know what's your next step. So one of the best ways to get out of stress and overwhelm is to start getting into action, right? And one of the mistakes that people make, especially entrepreneurs, people who are creating their own businesses, and there's a lot on their plate that they're in constant motion about. One of the biggest mistakes is going straight into action or even straight into mindset without the first two steps. It's a serious, serious error. It's super important to go through steps 1 and 2 before creating your new mindset. You want to know what your old one was, and you want to be able to let that go by allowing for it, right? And they jump into action. So if you've done the first 3 steps, now you want to take action. You want to create just one step, not a whole long list, right? You want to create one step at a time, and maybe, number them in order, but not to take on too much at once, because wasn't it taking too much on at once that created the overwhelming stress in the first place, right? So quick recap: step number 1, awareness; step number 2, allowance; step number 3, creation; and step number 4, action, right? And those are the 4 steps in the way that I described it to reduce your stress. Okay, great. So Tyhson is asking, right, how do people get a hold of me? And I just have to say, Tyhson, you're doing a wonderful job in a stressful situation of keeping calm. That's great. Right, breathing, like you told me before the call. So this is really exciting, because I've given you these 4 steps, and I really hope that you can go ahead and use them. And if you want to experience them, I have a free opportunity that I'm inviting you to, and that's going to be on this Facebook post, where you can join me for a group training, an interactive training, and I'll actually walk you through these 4 steps so that you can experience them and put them into practice. And that's something really exciting that I love doing with people. So you can check that out. And you can feel free to contact me if you would like on my website. That's on the post, on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. And I would love to see you at my online training. It's free, so that I can learn more about you and what it is that causes you stress, what it is that that you want to transform in your life. So Tyhson's typing again. Thank you so much for having me on this show, Tyhson. I enjoyed seeing you, not hearing you all the time, but I'll speak with you soon. And thank you so much again. Bye for now.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca. and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.